The sidewalk survey just a little bit here at Campello Station. I want to point off to the in the distance a block or so away from Campello Station are a couple of the very few high-rise buildings, not super high-rise, but about 8 or 10 story tall buildings. Not very common in Brockton, but there are a few. These are public housing units. I'm not sure exactly what their legal, who they serve. But I do believe they are publicly owned and operated. But I came over here mainly because I noticed this Campello Keith oil, established 1907. Nice, brightly, freshly painted tanks here. These are oil tanks for home heating oil, and this is a season where they're starting to become very busy, and we have heating oil as a major source throughout New England. And I'd like to point out there's some water down there below. I don't know if you can see. It looks like they're in a big concrete tank. It's because when you have a tank containing oil or a hazardous substance, it must be surrounded by a berm. This is U.S. law. It must be surrounded by a berm that would hold the entire contents of one of those tanks if it should leak and entirely flow out. And it might not look like the math is correct, but trust me, the math is correct. It has to, if it all emptied, there'd have to still be a certain amount of what's called freeboard or space between the oil and the top. One clever thing about putting 4 of them together is they have one containment. It only has to hold the contents of one tank. The assumption is they wouldn't all break open at once. Sometimes this goes wrong in New Orleans, but generally this is a system that works pretty well. And one of the things I got to do in another life was actually do these calculations for a hazardous waste tank in Puerto Rico. So you never know when your math skills might come in handy. The last thing I wanted to mention is this name, Campello Keith. Of course, it's called Campello because that was the name that Italian migrants gave this neighborhood. This was the flat farmland-looking part of Brockton at one time. And Keith is the name of a family in any city or town. You probably have this in your own town. There are certain family names that you see pop up all over the place where you might not even expect it. Some of my friends who live in East Bridgewater live in a house that's called a Keith house, meaning the Keith family were the original owners of it in the 1700s, and it is still known by that name today. Keith went on to become kind of an important political family in our area, all over the Bridgewaters and Brockton.